The political tension between the United States and Brazil has taken a dramatic turn. On Monday, the Trump administration imposed sanctions on Viviane Barcy de Moraes, the wife of Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, as part of an ongoing diplomatic standoff that has intensified over the months. This latest move is part of a broader strategy aimed at Brazil's judiciary, which has now expanded to include Barcy de Moraes and a financial entity she controls, Lex Instituto de Estudos Jurídicos, which the U.S. government believes could potentially serve as a vehicle for evading sanctions. Sanctions were enacted under the Global Magnitsky Act, a tool that the Trump administration has been using to target individuals deemed to have engaged in corruption or human rights abuses. The U.S. government's actions come as the simmering tensions between the two largest democracies in the Western Hemisphere deepen. Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who presided over the controversial criminal case against former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, has already been hit with sanctions in July. This was followed by the stripping of U.S. visas for Moraes and other Brazilian Supreme Court justices. But the imposition of these sanctions has only highlighted the escalating conflict between the two nations. For the Trump administration and its allies, the case against Bolsonaro, which culminated in a conviction earlier this month, is viewed by many as a political witch hunt. Bolsonaro, who attempted to cling to power after his 2022 election loss to current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, was sentenced to 27 years in prison for attempting a self-coup. His legal team has made it clear that they will appeal the decision, though legal experts see little chance of success. The new sanctions on Barcy de Moraes are just one part of the Trump administration's ongoing pushback against what it perceives as a troubling political climate in Brazil, particularly in relation to censorship and the broader political repression under Moraes' leadership. For his part, de Moraes has remained defiant, standing firm on his stance that judicial independence must be maintained at all costs. Respect comes from independence, de Moraes stated in August. A subservient, cowardly judiciary, one that makes deals just to calm the country down, is not independent. While the Brazilian government has declined to comment on the sanctions, and Barcy de Moraes' law firm has yet to respond to inquiries, the U.S. government has made it clear that these measures are part of a broader strategy to address what it believes are undemocratic actions by Brazil's top judiciary. This diplomatic rift isn't just about Bolsonaro's conviction. It's about what the U.S. sees as a sweeping censorship regime in Brazil, which has been criticized for targeting conservatives, including some legal U.S. residents. The Trump administration views this as a direct threat to freedom of expression. Brazil's government, however, denies these claims, insisting that its actions are meant to protect democratic institutions from forces that seek to destabilize them. The debate over freedom of speech in Brazil has become increasingly contentious. In recent years, Brazilian authorities, led by Moraes, have taken drastic measures to curb online discourse. High-profile social media profiles have been removed through often secretive court orders, and probes into public figures have raised alarms about the erosion of due process. Critics argue that these actions represent a troubling trend towards censorship and an infringement on basic civil liberties. Supporters, however, maintain that these efforts are necessary to protect Brazil's young democracy from real and credible threats. The Trump administration is also keeping a close eye on a potential amnesty bill currently working its way through Brazil's Congress. This bill could provide relief to Bolsonaro, his associates, and even pro-Bolsonaro demonstrators involved in the violent January 8th attack on government buildings in Brasilia. The bill is still in its early stages, and its provisions are unclear. It could either shorten sentences or annul convictions altogether, but whether it will extend to Bolsonaro himself remains uncertain. The Trump administration has made it clear that it would strongly prefer a full amnesty for all those involved in the attack on Brazil's government institutions, including Bolsonaro. For the U.S. to lift its sanctions, it insists that Brazil must offer full amnesty, However, there is a significant constitutional obstacle to this approach. Brazilian court officials have indicated that Congress does not have the power to grant amnesty to Bolsonaro for his crimes, which could lead to a legal showdown between Brazil's legislative and judicial branches. As tensions continue to rise, the U.S. sanctions have put the spotlight on Brazil's judiciary and the broader political climate in the country. While the Brazilian government has maintained its stance on judicial independence, critics of Moraes and his actions argue that the current regime is increasingly hostile to dissent and free speech. The United States, for its part, is doubling down on its position, using economic sanctions to apply pressure on Brazil's political elite. The question now is how long the Brazilian government will remain steadfast in its defense of judicial independence, and whether the U.S. sanctions will have the desired effect. What is clear is that the showdown between these two powerful democracies is far from over, and the stakes have never been higher.